Want to make your brand great again? Or simply make your brand? Go check out our sponsor, SpotlightDesign.com now. That's SpotlightDesign.com now.
Welcome to the CHYE in partnership with COL Live K-Factor podcast with your host, Rabbi Yehoshua Wordy, director of CHYE. Each week we bring you interviews with amazing Jewish entrepreneurs sharing their challenges and successes. Their stories will inspire you to make the Keli and take your business aspiration to the next level. Everybody, welcome back. CHYE K-Factor podcast. This week, I'm very excited to be sitting with one of CHYE's most popular mentors, businessman par excellence, Shmuly Goldman. Baruch Hashem, the success of CHYE has been the fact that we've been able to tap into the amazing talent that we have in this community. And in the 5 years that we've been running the CHYE mentor program, Shmuly has been one of our most popular mentors, and he's really helped a tremendous amount of businesses. And I've got to see firsthand his business knowledge and his skills in sharing that wisdom with others. And I'm very excited to be sitting here today together with Shmuly. Shmuly, welcome to the K-Factor podcast.
Thank you very much.
It's an honor and a pleasure, and I'm sure that our listeners are going to really enjoy this. So in classic K-Factor style, we like to go back to Yemei Bereshis. We like to take our listeners back to the beginning of your journey. So, you learned in the yeshiva system, you went through 770. Talk to us about that point in time when you transitioned into the business world. How did that happen, and where did you go to?
Oh, that's a long story. And I guess for the purpose of this discussion, brevity is probably a noble thing to do. So yeah, I went through the yeshiva system, trained to become a shliach, and for reasons that the Eibishter and the Rebbe knows, that didn't work out for me, and was faced with the prospect of earning a living and making some money. And turned out that I got a job working for Eichler's bookstore.
Oh, Eichler's.
Who were at the time trying to launch a catalog business. This was in the days before online, and if you wanted to sell direct to consumers, you had to print the catalog and send it in the mail. They called it the mail order business. And they brought me on to help make that happen. And they introduced me to a computer for which I was going to be using to catalog all the books and so on that Eichler sells. And the salesperson who sold them that computer saw that I was able to figure certain things out on the computer that was obviously somehow impressed him. And he was telling me that I ought to study computers. And so eventually I did go to COPE, which was a popular training program in those days for computers. And I studied...
Just for the purposes of our listeners, the COPE Institute is a project of Agudas Yisrael and has trained many thousands of Frum Yidden. Today, it's primarily focused on accounting. It's a very strong accounting program.
Right. In those days, I'm not even sure they had an accounting program then, but it was really a lot of computer programming. A lot of men and women went through the COPE program. And as did I and a number of my friends, and went out and found jobs as computer programmers mostly in significant corporations in those days that were hiring people with technical skills. So, in fact, having those skills was an entree into the corporate world that, without really having gone through college or having chosen a different path to get into the business world, allowed somebody with a yeshiva background to actually enter into the business world and to begin to earn money as a professional.
And to interject a comment, I'm a very firm believer if somebody is not the entrepreneur type and they're looking to get into a good long-term job prospect, if they're the right personality type, technology is a tremendous way to go. Really, you could learn coding and programming. They have these boot camps you could learn in 3 to 4 months, and you could end up in a respectable starting job with tremendous growth potential. It really is it's a tremendous field worth exploring.
I agree. I think that, technical knowledge is something that you can acquire. I think especially for people who have gone through the yeshiva system, who have studied Gemara and logic, which Gemara is a lot of logic and a lot of arguments. And I think that's a helpful start to people who have to get into the computer programming world. And I will add to that not only is it for people who are not entrepreneurial per se, but even for people who might be entrepreneurial, it's a good way to get started and learn the business and understand how it works. And then eventually you can become entrepreneurial, which is really kind of what happened to me.
So share with us, how did that happen?
So, I spent the first couple of years of my professional career working for a variety of companies. I worked at the Long Island Railroad. I worked at the United Nations. And at some point in time, especially back then, the notion of being what was called an independent contractor was a choice that one could make. Either be an employee of a company or you be a contractor. Contractor took more risks, but made a little more money. And so I chose the contractor route, which meant that every little while or so, I had to go find my next contract to be able to work. And so that led me into a variety of different companies. And eventually I ended up working at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals as a consultant, and had a good experience there. I think that they appreciated my skills and what value I brought to the company. And while I was there, it was the early days of the internet. And so my first couple of years there, I worked on, large mainframe systems, and I worked on Pfizer's drug safety systems, which are the systems that help drug companies keep track of the bad things that happen to people that take their products. And they have to report that to the governments of the world and let them know that such and such happened to people who took our product. And so I learned a lot about the pharmaceutical business, but I also learned a lot about technology. And I got very intrigued with the internet back then, which was in its early stages. And so I began to pursue learning as much as I could about the internet and the technology of the internet. And eventually that led to me getting hired by Pfizer full-time to start their internet practice, their internet business. I launched the first www.pfizer.com. So I was like a pioneer, somewhat of a pioneer in this space in the corporate world. And the combination of my knowledge of Pfizer and my combination of the knowledge of the internet eventually, through various political upheavals, led me to going back as a consultant, and Pfizer was my first client. And
so let me interrupt you for a second before we segue into your business and that story. For the benefit of the listeners here, some of them will be interested in pursuing jobs in large corporations. Do you have any wisdom to share with people that are going to end up in those places? Anything that you want to?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, that there's a misconception that everybody who works in large corporations is somehow smarter, better, or more capable than anybody else. And it's just not true. Large corporations, especially large corporations, are full of all kinds of people, some great, some not so great. And that we have nothing to be ashamed of and nothing to be afraid of. I think that if you are confident in yourself and your skills and you present yourself professionally, it doesn't really matter your background or what you look like, whether you have a full beard and a yarmulke and the tzitzis are out. I'm not talking about being a schlump and being unprofessional, but being professional. I've never in my professional career found anyone to treat me in any way differently than they would any other professional. And for myself, the same applied to them. I treated people professionally, and I expected to be treated professionally. And that's the way it's been. So my advice to anybody entering the world of business, especially large corporations, is not to be afraid. Be yourself, be professional. And you know what? I think, if you're a mensch, it comes through and people appreciate your honesty, your integrity. I think that there's a certain standard that we do have to live up to, maybe a little bit better than others, because we are expected to be a light unto the nations, and our integrity should be impeccable. And I think it's respected.
So, but from another angle, what about someone who's in now? They're in and they want to, what's your tip to them so that they could excel within the corporate environment?
Well, look, I mean, it's no different than any other environment, right? You need to work hard. You need to develop and grow. So I think one of the things I used to like to tell people when I was hiring them is that my company is not looking for people who do jobs. We're looking for, one of the attributes I was looking for were learning organisms. I wanted people who are natural curiosity, who are always trying to find out something new. And when you find out something new, see if you can find a way to bring that knowledge to the benefit of the company you work for. Make your boss look good. I mean, these are all like simple things, but if you demonstrate creativity, if you demonstrate an entrepreneurial spirit, even within the corporation, hey, there's something that needs to get done. I could do that. And you go to somebody and say, why don't I take care of that? You have no idea how much that is appreciated by the people who are responsible for those activities. And when the time comes to think about who's going to get the promotion, who's going to get that next opportunity, it's going to be a natural thing for people to think about the people that went the extra mile, the people that demonstrated an interest in the good of the company, the people that demonstrated their ability to tackle something that maybe other people either disregarded or were afraid of. So put your best foot forward, and you don't have to run around tooting your horn. Your actions will be the loudest thing that you can do. At the same time, I will say, being modest to the point where you don't take any credit for the good work that you've done is also not a good idea. So you have to find that right balance between modesty and being able to make sure that people understand that you are a high performer. And I think you can find that balance, and that'll be a good path towards growth in the corporation.
Well, I would like to say that here in Crown Heights, I think it's safe to say that in every major corporation, we have somebody here in the community that's a high-ranking person, JP Morgan and all of these large corporations, AIG. All right, so let's segue over then. So you became an independent contractor, and Pfizer took you on as your first client. Tell us, how you built your company.
So while I was at Pfizer, I had a client at Pfizer. And he had another consultant that worked for him on a different project, and we got to know each other. And as I was entering Pfizer to become a full-time employee, my client was actually exiting Pfizer. Again, corporations are like little international, like it's almost like the UN to a certain extent, international organizations, right? So there's different waves of movement going on. At that time, there was a change in the organization that he didn't feel comfortable with, and he wanted to leave the organization. And so he arranged for him to leave with a contract to Pfizer, and I came in. Anyway, we were good. We became friends, and through that friendship, we actually ended up deciding to form a partnership. So the three of us partnered up. We each had a different skill. At the time, we were really a technology company. I was the internet technologies. My one partner was mainframe or legacy technology. And my third partner knew client server technology, was at the time was one of the very viable technologies out there. So we felt like we brought an interesting combination to the table to service corporations, that we spanned everything from the legacy sort of big mainframe computers to the emerging web. And we could make those things talk to each other, which at the time was, today these things are commonplace, but at the time that was a not simple thing to accomplish, nor was it commonly done. So that's how the company started. And frankly, we were very fortunate to have a mothership called Pfizer, and they were a great client of all of ours, and eventually, became our largest client, to the point where a number of years later, after the company had grown, we had a concerted effort to actually reduce Pfizer's concentration in our company, because they kept buying more and more services from us. So, that really isn't a very safe place for a company to be. So we need to diversify our client base. So we actually, spent a lot of time and energy growing elsewhere. But really, so, over time, what happened was that we realized that we were competing against many, many technology companies. Even in friendly environments like Pfizer, there was competition, and we weren't always winning. And so we decided at that time that competing on technology alone was not a winning proposition for us, because we would it'd be very hard to differentiate ourselves in a sea of technology companies. So we decided rather to focus on the business and began to focus on the pharmaceutical industry, amongst other industries. And that really made a big difference for us in terms of changing the value proposition of the company, changing our whole marketing message, changing our focus. It gave us a lot of drive and determination and clarity.
I recall in one of the very first CHYE workshops that we hosted, which was recorded by video and is available on our YouTube channel, you spoke about every company having to know their EST.
Correct.
But if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, so it's something I really believe in a lot. When I said everybody has to know their EST, is that you can have, there are a lot of companies out there that have determined what their EST is, right? If you look at Amazon.
Sorry, just define EST.
That's what I'm going to do. If you look at Amazon, if you're pretty much known as the cheap EST, right? Walmart maybe also the cheap EST, right? Rolls-Royce might be just the best, right? So every company has to define what their EST is. Are you going to be the best? Are you going to be the fastest? Are you going to be the cheapest? Are you going to be the smartest? I don't know what your EST is going to be, but pick one. Because if you try to be everything, if you try to be the cheapest and the best, it's probably going to be impossible to achieve, right? Because you're not going to be able to be cheap and best at the same time. So pick one of your EST, whatever that's going to be, and focus on that relentlessly. And I think that's the path, especially for a smaller growing business, having something to really hang your hat on and tell your story. And that's what we're really all about. It gives tremendous buoyancy to the company and influences so many decisions about hiring and selling. And it really, I think the best advice I can give anybody is pick something that makes you unique. I know that, a lot of people have talked about your unique value proposition or unique selling proposition, but really that's really the smartest thing that we did. Between that and just hiring incredibly great people, those are the two best advice I can give any company, that if they're going to do two things, it's focus on what makes you great and hire fantastic people.
So let's dig deeper into that sense. In other words, tell us a little bit in the story format how you began to focus and and how that came about.
Sure. So like I said, we started out as technology, and then we decided to become industry focused rather than technology focused. At the time, we had clients in the pharmaceutical industry, we had clients in banking, and we had some clients in publishing, all names that most people would probably know. Our publishing client was Scholastic Books, the makers of many, many school books, and the Harry Potter series. At the time when we had them as a client, Harry Potter had just launched, and it was like the biggest, craziest thing that was going on. And that was an exciting time to have them as a client. So we decided at the time to focus on pharmaceuticals, financials, and publishing as vertical industries that we would be involved in, because simply we had those as clients already. So we decided we'd focus on those industries. And then at some point we decided to add energy, because we were thinking that we should really focus on regulated industries like the pharmaceutical industry, the financial services industry, energy industry, all have a lot of government regulations associated with them. So we thought, okay, we can help regulated companies be successful. But the reality was, as we went out and competed in those spaces, we realized over some period of time that while we were able to close some deals in those industries, the truth was that to really effectively compete as an industry expert took a lot of effort, took a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. We couldn't just hire one or two experts and really be able to say that we were really great at servicing a particular industry. So as a services company, that's what we did, right? We helped companies with our people and our services. We didn't sell them anything except our services and our expertise. It became apparent that we needed to narrow our focus. And so we slowly jettisoned all the industries except for pharmaceuticals, which was our biggest practice, where we had the largest footprint, where we had the most knowledge. And we started focusing on the pharmaceutical industry. And within pharmaceuticals, we said we could do a bunch of different things here. And so we started selling a variety of different areas within pharmaceuticals, for everything from drug discovery to drug safety to systems validation to clinical trials management to finance and operations to many other things that we were trying to help people with. And over time, again, we realized that even in this one industry, where we competed most effectively was where we really had the greatest depth of knowledge. And so again, we began to narrow our focus, and eventually we primarily became a drug safety services company. And once we reached that point where we really knew what our identity was, that we were a drug safety focused company of about 170 people, a variety of stripes, at that point, we could effectively walk into any corporation in the world and sit across the table from anybody, any executive in any role in that company, and say to them, we are the best company in the world that can help you with drug safety. There are bigger companies, right? There are large consultancies like Accenture and Deloitte and PricewaterhouseCoopers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's nobody better than us. And even though they may have 40,000 people working for them, they probably don't have 170 drug safety experts on staff. We do. So that was really our differentiator, and one that enabled us to compete with those kinds of companies. We went up against them all the time. And more often than not, we won when we were competing on a bid for a project, because it was crystal clear to whoever talked to us that we had a depth of knowledge and capability that the other guys couldn't do. They couldn't touch. So I think that was a tremendously powerful move for us. And in the end, it was what attracted people to look at our company in terms of becoming an important part of their organizations.
So, but before we jump to that, since you said the second thing about saw your EST as bringing in good people, let's talk a little bit about that, how you attracted good people. And I know a lot of people that are listening to this, they hire, and what's some tips for people to make a good hire?
Well, I mean, I think knowing what you're looking for is a very important thing. So we were looking often for the needle in the haystack, literally the needle in the haystack. I mean, it was a very, very narrow field of knowledge that we were looking to hire into. And the number of people in the world that had the knowledge that we were looking for were small. So the first challenge for a company like ours was actually even finding people. And a lot of that had to do with networking. A lot had to do with having recruiters on staff that were constantly trolling the networks, calling, networking. We worked with recruiting firms. We worked with anything that we could. And as things like LinkedIn came about and other social networks, business social networks, they became a very valuable tool in our recruiting process, as well as, you know, the more time we were in an industry, the more trade shows we attended, the more people we saw, you know, the connections begin to build, and slowly we found people. And then once you've really identified the kind of person you're looking for, and it's not just skill, it's also personality, right? We had to determine what is the personality of somebody, what is our company's personality? What kind of people do we want working here? And that was also, you know, a process of identifying that. When I said, you know, when I talk to people and I say, you know, we want people who like to learn. We want people who are not looking for a job, they're looking for a career. We want people who are looking to make a difference, right? We want people who want their work to matter. Those were all personality traits that we identified. But
that would be something that almost anyone would say that they're looking for.
I mean, if they were lying to me, it's possible that people lie.
I'm saying
no, there are people who want a job. There are people who want to go to work in the morning and go home at night and do a good job while they're at work and not think about their work when they get home, right? There are people who are not looking for great advancement. There are people who are not looking to generate or grow a large career. So different kind of personalities.
So what would you do to figure that out? You know, how would you?
Well, we did a lot of interviewing. So there wasn't anybody that was hired in our company that probably had a minimum of 3 to 4 interviews before they were hired by different people. We gathered all that data together, all the different people and personalities that they met. Sometimes you'd have 1 or 2 people say, we like this person. And then other 2 people would say, absolutely not. And we would have a discussion. Why yes? Why not? And sometimes it turn out, they asked a question that I didn't think of. And oh my God, thank God you asked that question, because you're right. This is not a person that we would hire. And sometimes we'd make a mistake. We tried hard to hire well. And most of the times we did. And we realized that sometimes we make mistakes. And it's another bit of advice that I can give people is when you figure out that you made a mistake, correct it as quickly as you can. Because nobody's going to be happy, either you nor the person who's the wrong hire. So I think if you go through that process consistently and with discipline, and end up with a high-performing workforce. And that's what we really worked hard to achieve. And I think it was a tremendously valuable thing for the business. It was literally, I think that a company like that, with a company full of high-performing individuals, lifts each other up. The people lift each other up. Nobody drags anybody down. And it creates, great buoyancy in the organization. Now, it also creates other challenges because high-performing people want to work on high-performing jobs. They want to work on challenge. They want to have challenging work. They want to have career advancement. They want to have recognition. They want to be well paid. So all those challenges exist as well. So you have to be prepared for that kind of environment if that's the kind of business that you're running. Now, I'm not saying that every business needs that, right? That every business needs to take that approach. Again, it depends on the kind of business that you're building. If I was opening a McDonald's, arguably, I don't know if I want very creative entrepreneurial people there, because I want them to follow the recipe exactly. I want them to make that burger exactly the way I want them to make it. I don't want them to think about, I can make this better. No, there's a formula. You got to follow the formula, otherwise we get in trouble. So there are different kinds of industries, different kinds of jobs. For my company, for the kind of company that we were building, that was a critical factor in our success.
So you mentioned that your company grew to being 170 employees. You must have spent a lot of time working on the company culture. Dwell a little bit on that. As people grow their businesses and they start having multiple employees, each company develops a unique culture. How do you work with that to develop it?
Well, I think first you have to decide what is your company culture, and you could actually sit down and figure that out. I guess I'll take a tiny step back and say that in order to do any of these things, in order to grow a business, to create a company culture, to create a high-performing workforce, all the things that we're talking about here take time and energy. And if you're going to be as a business owner or as a business leader, if the only thing you have time for is, for instance, selling, and no time for management and no time for doing these things, then they're actually not going to happen. You'll have a different kind of culture. You'll have a culture of selling, which you might want. But there's no way to build all these things without actually focusing time and energy on them. And it doesn't have to be you, right? If you're the greatest salesman in the world and you're the entrepreneur and you run the business and your skill is being out there and doing all those things, power to you, make it so. But if you want a company culture, then you have to find somebody who could do that for you. It may be, an HR professional that you bring into the company that has that kind of skill, knows how to do, develop a company culture, develop a company ethos, develop your company's mission statement, vision, your code of ethics. All of these things begin to permeate an organization if you develop them, if you're clear in communicating them, and you consistently communicate them. And then, you could do other things. You could have a culture of collaboration, a culture of having some fun. How do you do that? Well, you do once a month, have a party. There are things that you could do, just, institutionalize into your company's culture, that this is how we do things, right? We work hard, but once a week we take a break and we have a good time. There are ways in which you can do things like that. Again, I'm not giving a script for any particular business about you could do this or that, but sit down, think about it, and develop what it is that you want to do, and then do it consistently. And you'll find that the company culture will develop around those ideas that you thought of. So at some point, sitting in an office with your colleagues, thinking about what kind of company culture you want. Think about what you want. Think about what kind of activities would engender that kind of feeling in the company, then engage in those activities on a consistent basis. at some point, we actually made part of our annual evaluation process. One of the things that we looked at was contribution to company culture. When we evaluate an employee, it wasn't just did they do their job, but did they also contribute to the company culture? In what way? And we measured that. It wasn't like, okay, did you check off X box or Y box? But it was things like that. Did you live our values? In which way? And we asked for examples. One of our values, for instance, was honesty. One of our values was collaboration. I forget all of them off the top of my head, but we had like 7 company values that we established. And when we asked people to say, well, how did you exemplify one or more of our values this year, and give us an example? And so by constantly asking for that from our employees and from our colleagues, that's the kind of company we became.
So it sounds like at some point in time, as the company was growing, you decided, as opposed to being on the front end of the business, you turned to the inside of the business. Is that
It's accurate. So we were 3 partners, as I said earlier. We started the business. Each one of us had our clients. Each one of us serviced our clients. Each one of us also wore some hat about running the company. Some of us ran IT, some of us ran finance, some of us ran HR, and we sort of divided up these responsibilities. And as the company grew, it became clear that it was not a recipe for tremendous success. And there was a lot of confusion. People didn't know who to talk to for what. And we had various departments not really talking to each other. So, for instance, if 2 people one person running finance, one person was running HR, then HR and finance didn't necessarily talk to each other because they had different managers and different bosses. So when it became clear that we needed to do something different, I guess I volunteered to take on the role of COO and have all the operational departments report to me. So I transitioned my clients to both of my partners. I split up my clients and handed them over to my partners and told all my clients that these will be your new partner to deal with, and slowly moved myself away from the client side and more to the running the business side. And eventually I had HR, finance, IT, marketing, and sales to a certain extent reporting to me. And that's what happened. And I'd like to think that it was a good move for the company. I'm pretty sure it was. And it allowed me to actually learn a lot about the different competencies and different skills that are required to keep a business running smoothly and properly. Besides the art of selling and delivering, making all that work well is not simple.
That's tremendous. So take us to the end of the story. The company grew and grew, and then, as far as I understand, there was this exciting exit. I guess share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, like I said, we developed a reputation in the industry as a drug safety boutique consultancy. But we were a relatively small company. But when anybody engaged with us, it was for them an on-par experience with working with any of the large consultancies. Not in terms of the rigidity or the bureaucracy that these large companies had, but the level of professionalism was on par, and the level of sophistication was on par. So we had that reputation, and eventually we decided that the way our company was structured, the possibility really of us having exponential growth was probably not going to happen organically the way we were running the company, and that it made sense for us to look for an exit strategy, which could take many forms, like going public, etc. For a company like ours, going public at that time that we sold was really not an option. I'm not sure if it ever really was an option. Maybe in the wild and woolly days of the internet bubble it was possible, but in normal times that doesn't happen. And so we hired investment bankers and put ourselves out there as a company interested in talking about a merger. And we entertained a number of interested parties, and through sort of a bidding process and a little, dating process, corporate dating, We ended up choosing to sell our company to Deloitte Consulting, which was at the time the world's largest consulting company, who had a life sciences practice, for which we were a very interesting addition to their practice. A, because our client base, they weren't in all our clients yet, so we had clients that they did not have, and B, they did not have the expertise in drug safety that we had, and so it was a good match. It was also important for us as leaders of our company and being responsible for our employees to not just sell the company to anybody. We also wanted our employees to transition to a company that we could respect, and one in which we felt they would be treated fairly and have greater opportunities. And that's another reason that we decided to sell, is because as our company was growing and had now become, a number of years in business, and thankfully we had a very low turnover rate, so we had people had stayed with us for a bunch of years. Their careers also wanted to progress. And unless our company was going to grow exponentially and create greater and greater and greater and greater and larger and larger and larger opportunities for our senior people, they were going to run out of room to grow, because how much more can you do with a company our size? How many top level people do we need? And so by joining forces with a much larger organization, we created a much longer runway, and their careers could have much greater growth moving forward, which we also felt was an important thing for us to do in terms of caring for our employees. And so after a song and dance and working hard at negotiations and so on, eventually we did sell the company to Deloitte Consulting in June of 2011. And I'm pleased to see I stay in touch with a number of my ex-employees. There is an alumni group that is active somewhat on Facebook, and still, friends with a number of the people out there. And lots and lots of them are still working at Deloitte right now. So I'm pleased to see that Deloitte has seen value from their acquisition, and our employees have found success in their new home.
So that's an amazing story, from 770 to a company, to corporate America, to a company of 170 employees, to being sold to one of the world's largest companies. It's really a tremendous story. So that has taken a tremendous amount of time and really leaves us just here with a few minutes. Let me just ask you a few of our popular questions, but we'll do them rapid fire, like they're just quick, short answers. So number one, if you turn now to a young, what did you wish when you were starting out that someone shared with you that would have been a tremendous boost? Or flipping the question the other way, if you looked at a young man or woman that came to you and said, hey, I'm starting out in the business world, what's that number one tip, short tip that you would share with them?
Learn a lot.
What do you mean, learn a lot means what?
I mean, whatever it is that you're involved in, learn as much about it as you can. Become an expert. Go beyond the basic knowledge that's around you. You're doing whatever job you're doing, I promise you that there's something that you could learn that other people don't know about what you're doing. You're developing a product, you're cleaning phones, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is, there's always something that you could learn more about, learn about it, become an expert.
Okay. Question as follows. Who did you look up to in business, or did you have a mentor?
Well, it's hard for me to answer that question. I'm not really sure. I had people that helped me along the way, but I can't say that there was anybody when I was starting out that I looked at and went, this is the person that's really going to help me, give me advice, and so on. Kadosh Baruch Hu.
Kadosh Baruch Hu. So, is there a particular business book that ever you read that was like something you tell everyone, please, you got to read this book?
So I'll tell you the truth. There are so many business books out there, and many, many, many of them are great. I think I only read one or two business books in my entire life. There's a lot of knowledge available on the web. I guess I'm not a huge business book reader. I did read Michael Gerber's book a long, long time ago, The E-Myth. I think it was The E-Myth Revisited. That was one of the few business books that I read that I really did like, and it did help me in the early stages of my business and understanding that I needed to think about systems, and I needed to think about repeatable processes, and I needed to think about a lot of things. So given the fact that that's one of the few books that I read, I guess I would say I recommend that book. There are many, many books. My caution to people is that you don't become a slave to the business book du jour. I've seen many, many managers in my life who have read the latest book, come into work the next week, and have this new energy and tremendously new, we're going to do things very differently from now on. I read this amazing book. And that lasts for a little while, maybe until they read the next book. And then they come in the next week and they say, oh, we're going to do things all differently now. And I think that the real answer is that they're all good. Or I shouldn't say all, many, many books are good. You got to find the right answer for your business. And when you find something that's working well for you, make it work for you. You don't have to keep changing all the time in the next book you read.
Okay. Work-life balance. Okay. Torah, how does the chassid fit into their life? Work, learning, family. What's your secret?
So that's one of the things that I often ask mashpiyim, and I've never really heard the greatest answer to this question, which is, we know that Birchas Hashem Hitashir, everything comes from the Eibishter, and no matter what you do, it's going to be what the Eibishter wants you to get. So at the same time, Zigiyah Kapech Yiseichel, right? You got to work hard for your bread. And Al Pi Derech HaTeva, if you work harder, you work smarter, you work better, you'll be more matzliach. So how do you find that balance between which one is it? Is it Yigei Kabech Yiseichel? Is it Birchas Hashem Hitashir? So it's this constant struggle, between I have to stay late at work. No, I'm gonna have to be at work early. No, I want to do a shiur. I want to do homework with my kids. This is a struggle, and at some point, and I think it may be okay to think about this in terms of cycles, that there are cycles of life, there are cycles of work, and sometimes work is going to be pretty consuming, and that might be okay to say, I'm in that cycle right now, but I know that there's a time in my life that I'm going to have to be different. I don't have the answer to that question, really. It's something that I struggled with my whole life, both personally and philosophically. I guess the answer is both. You have to do both. You have to find some way to balance them out, because clearly you can't sit at home and expect to find hatzlacha. That's not the way Eibishter made the world. He wants us to work hard. I guess work hard and have bitachon, I guess, is the right approach.
That's beautiful. And last question, last but not least, is there any story of Kiddush Hashem or Hashgacha Pratis in all the years of your life and business that sticks out in your mind?
I think every day and every minute of my life and business is Hashgacha Pratis, because I didn't plan this. I think one of the things that you talk about with people is about planning their careers and planning their lives. I did not plan this. This was no master plan where I said, I'm going to go to computer school, I'm going to become a programmer, I'm going to become a consultant, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to be in the pharmaceutical industry, none of that was planned. This was all really Hashgacha Pratis, the hand of Hashem guiding me through various stages of my life. I really do believe that, I worked hard. Yes, I studied, I learned, I tried my best. But at the end of the day, it was really Hashgacha Pratis that led me wherever I went and wherever I did. And trust Hashem.
As the Rebbe Rashab would frequently say, it's the Bali Asik that get to see the Yad Hashem in a much more open way than the Yeshvei Oihel.
So I don't have a particular miracle story that I could share with you that say, all I can say is that every time that there was something that happened, it was Hashgacha Pratis.
Awesome. This has really been an amazing conversation. Anyone that's listening to this and would love to catch a schmooze with you, how would they do that? Well,
I'm associated with CHYE, and I am still available as a mentor through the mentorship program. And if anybody would like to chat, I'd be happy to try to make some time. and they can reach out through CHYE.
Okay, awesome. We're looking forward to a new influx of mentor requests. This has really been a wonderful interview here at the K Factor. For all of you listening, we'd love to hear your feedback. If you have people that you'd like to recommend that we interview, you could reach me at rabbiw@chye.info. And once again, Shmuly, thank you very much. And everyone, Mechayel El Chayel, continued success in all you do.
Thank you for listening to the CHYE in partnership with COL Live K Factor podcast with your host, Rabbi Yehoshua Werdy. We're looking forward to bringing you more entrepreneurs to share their amazing stories. See you next week.